What you're about to see is a conversation between Father Francis Gargani, a Redemptorist priest, and myself, Eddie Leonard, a clinical psychologist with a degree in theology, exploring the new Cosmos Theology, which brings in a revolutionary way the beliefs of Christianity to the cosmos and the discoveries in the cosmos. So, Francis, as you know, I am very excited, and I think you are too, but you can say if you are, that during the past year or two, I was introduced to this whole group of Catholic theologians who, in my opinion, and I've been, as you know, have background in theology, were saying something, excuse me, totally new. And I almost think I'm more excited than they are because it's just a whole new approach. And I would just like to say a few words of the approach and then see where you're at about it. But the approach for me is no longer, whereas in the beginning of the church did look at nature to find God. And it seems to me that in a huge way we've come full circle now. And these theologians have taken my belief system, not abandoned it, but have taken it and refocused it from a very static heaven, and for me, a very, dare I say, boring static creator, and have taken it down to the cosmos and have taken it down to in such an exciting way. And I also think, I'll talk more about that some other time, they've sort of taken them down to the place that science works too, because they're looking at the cosmos too. But I'm so excited over it, and we'll share our excitements. But how are you feeling about it, Francis, about
Well,
this
I
whole thing?
think you're pointing out, Eddie, that we're finally, once again, bringing the marriage of theology with science, which was, the process for good part of the history of the church. And then we had this terrible separation between science and theology. And I think we're experiencing this incredible coalescence again of those two disciplines because it's absurd for us to deny what we have now discovered through the great gifts of science, particularly cosmology and physics, modern physics. What they have opened up for us about the origin and the evolution of the universe. And to deny that is to be a fool, and to bring the richness of that to our theology and our theology to that has only made, I think, as you are saying, to be so excited because it's made this our theology so dynamic right now. For those authors who have been not afraid to benefit from the richness of cosmology, physics, and all that. And that's why so many of these modern authors are looking to Teilhard de Chardin as the great father and founder of this whole movement because he's the one who brought it to our
Yeah,
consciousness.
you know, his great book, The Human Phenomenon, he finished writing it in 1940. And I'm glad you brought up Teilhard because this whole exciting movement is all Teilhard de Chardin as being interpreted for us to understand it all. I just want to say though, there still are differences in this moment in history between materialistic science, and they're using things like the Webb telescope. We're using a different telescope still, which I might call faith. But I like the way you put it, Francis, because in reshifting the direction from this, for me, I don't think there is a heaven. I think heaven is in the cosmos. And I think that's where God dwells, and that's where we dwell, and everything. But there still are some differences, but there are so many, as you just so well said, so many common things we are using, as you just said. I'm saying it over again. We're thanking science, even not the materialistic scientists, but the discoveries of science, and saying this is enriching our theology. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I think it's also a place where all religions can find a commonality with science too, even though their belief systems may differ from ours. But anyway, I am very excited about this, and I just want to say that though I've probably said this before in the introduction, I feel, and there's some disagreement about this, I feel that the people who know about this at this point are these great theologians, like, I don't know them all, but Dilio and John Hort, and I don't know all of them, as I say, but they are, I lost my train of thought. Take it from there. I forget what I was going to say. Oh, I know.
Well, I just want to.
It's well known on that level. Now, some of the people, like our dear friend and great theologian Kathleen Degnan, has told me, "Oh, Eddie, people know about it," but I don't think the faithful know about this. I mean, I'm an educated, more than most theologian. I didn't know about this a couple of years ago. What about the faithful, who come to Eucharist every Sunday? I just don't think it's a fact they don't know it. Would you agree that they don't know it as a general population?
Yeah, I hate to agree with you in that sense, but I do agree. I think there's the vast majority of practicing Christians, and I don't want to sound so arrogant to say I know everything about our other Christian traditions, but I think I can safely say, whether it's Roman Catholic tradition or our other mainline church traditions, and certainly evangelical traditions, aren't really having their faith informed by the richness of what the universe story has opened up for us. The wonderful gift in our tradition of Father Thomas Berry, who certainly is in the rich heritage of Teilhard de Chardin. And Thomas Berry, became, for us, our Catholic geologian, as Kathleen always loved to call him, rather than just a theologian, but a geologian. And it's just made all the difference, I think, for those of us who have been studying spirituality, who have had the rich opportunity of being part of a community like you've been part of in the Grange, where you've shared from the wealth of some very significant people like your founders, Kathleen Degnan and John Giuliani. But the vast majority of Christians, our tradition and others, have yet to understand how this new science is informing our theology to make it ever more rich and to make much more sense. I think the reason there's been an enormous drop-off of people saying that they believe in any tradition, let alone practicing any tradition, is because of the dissonance intellectually. Because so many of our people today go off to high school and college and postgraduate work, and they see certainty of the way we have formulated from the past some of our teachings, not only doctrinal, but moral teaching. And it's all kind of, doesn't make sense for them. And I think that it's been a great disservice to people that we haven't integrated this science into our theology.
Okay. I think I would just, the reason I brought that up is that we're hoping, who knows if it'll be seen much, that these podcasts, and we're going to have future podcasts, and we're going to also, by the way, be interviewing people, right, for it, not just you and me.
I hope so. Because I ain't no authority.
If there's any way that this podcast can even influence one member of the faithful, what the heck, Uh, we'll start off small and see where it goes. But I just want to say, I think the reason that you and I are doing this is in the hopes and expectations that maybe this is going to spread the word around this wonderful new, um, uh, tremendous new theology or belief system, if you will. And I do want to say that I'm sure you'll agree with me because I think you're more versed in this than I am. It isn't. We're not saying that this new theology changes everything in the past. It builds, of course, on the 2,000 years of our faith. But I don't know if you feel this way, but I saw one author saying it, and I couldn't agree more, that certainly this is the most dramatic change that has happened, certainly in the last 800 years since Aquinas. The one author said that, and I personally couldn't agree with him more, even though there have been other developments. I just want to say a very brief overview, and maybe you can join me. Oh, also, Thomas Berry. I am embarrassed to admit that I have really not read much of Thomas Berry, though I know how enormously important it is. So I think that's going to enrich this conversation for me. Whenever you want to bring in Thomas Berry, who I assume was also influenced by Teilhard.
Oh, completely.
Yeah, yeah. So when you have
He's a son of Teilhard.
Okay, all right. Well, whenever you want, I'm here to learn how he may have contributed to this also. I just want to say that in refocusing to the cosmos, I think they are also, these theologians are also saying that that no longer do we just look for each one of us to obey the commandments and make sure that we get to heaven. Now it's our job to help the cosmos. That's the focus, not just the individual. But the focus now is on the whole cosmos to bring it. Excuse me, go ahead. I have to take a drink of water.
Well, I think you were going to sort of lead into saying in Chardin's language, bringing the cosmos to the omega point, to its glorious revelation. I think that what we're seeing is the result of many things where we're at right now, and that will be fun to maybe open up some of them.
What are you thinking about in many things? What are you thinking of?
Well, one of the strands I think that that for me has always been rich for me to open up is the understanding of the mystery of the Epiphany, and its complete centrality in our tradition, in our faith tradition, and how the Eastern rites managed to, in some ways, honor it better than we did in the Roman Rite, and then from us, our Protestant sisters and brothers got even less engaged with the power of the Epiphany mystery. And forgive me, I don't mean to be dominating this conversation, but I just want to share a little bit that the Epiphany, which we, always celebrated as a memory of when the three wise men supposedly visited Jesus, and in our tradition, it's celebrated the 6th of January, and we grew up as Roman Catholics calling it Little Christmas, whereas the Epiphany was the celebration of the Incarnation, and December 25th is a much later thing. It came in from the Roman Rite to kind of give a baptized feast of the Romans, which was the Saturnalia. So they put the feast of the birth of the Christ on the 25th of December. But what was lost, and the great emphasis in the Eastern Rite and the early church mothers and fathers, is that the Epiphany mystery is really about not just saying this Christ, and this was always the simple interpretation we used to get, that he was now not just Redeemer or Savior for just the Jewish people, but for everyone, for us Goyim, for us Goy, so for the Gentiles. And that was represented by this visitation of these three people from the East who were not Jewish. But the reality is that right from the beginning, the early church understood the Epiphany as the manifestation of divinity in humanity, right? That the Christ is truly divine as well as human, and that the Christ becoming fully one with us makes manifest our divinity. And as early on they understood the divinity of everything as well as everyone. So Irenaeus, who was part of that whole early tradition from the East, God became human so that human could become God. And in another place, the glory of God is woman and man fully alive. So what happened for us later on in our story, and that we can talk about later, is the terrible dichotomy between matter and spirit. So when we think of spiritual, we became then non-material. And to think of material was not to think spiritual. But the Epiphany mystery says everything is spiritual. And that's why Chardin would pick up a spoon and he would say, holy matter. Everything radiates with the divinity of Christ,
Yeah.
with the divinity of God. And that has changed the whole way we approach everything, including we of the tradition that always said the way you encounter God in our space and time was this eternal love act, crazy God love act of the dying and rising of Christ through something material like water for baptism or like bread and wine for Eucharist, and form some words so that you encounter God through the human experience of material stuff and people, bodies, speaking, gesture, art, color, music. And so you see, we had that in our tradition, but we kept saying, oh my God. So we made the bread not like bread. We would put oil, and right away we wouldn't pour real oil. We would just use a little bit of oil on a piece of cotton just to touch them. We wouldn't let a child really be bathed any longer in the water, but we just put a few drops of water. So we were afraid more and more and more of the material, and we were influenced by the Protestant Reformation. For every reform of the Protestant Reformation became less and less material. So not only did they not have statues, then they stopped having stained glass, then they stopped having music, and we got such exquisite traditions like the Quakers, or even better, the Mennonites or the Amish, where they go into a room and there's not a single adornment, there's no musical instruments. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's all because the material is not as holy or sacred. And it's that dichotomy that we're now finally addressing. And the whole Vatican Council was embedded in that understanding now that Chardin brought it back to us, that the human is a manifestation of the divine, and all creation is a manifestation of the divine. I'm sorry for going on. I'm sorry for going on.
And that the divine, that the Creator, the Christ also, and the Holy Sanctifier, the Creator is not equal to the matter, but dwelling in the matter. And so I often think of it, I have a forest behind my house, and when I'm walking there, you can have two eyeglasses. You can see that this forest is so beautiful and everything, but you can take that reality and put on another pair of glasses and see that you are walking surrounded and immersed in God. He's not up in some place in the sky in heaven, and he's not just sitting there looking at us. The Christ is, part of this whole new thing is that no matter that our job in life is to help the cosmos continue on its journey to, as you said, the omega point, and that our job is to assist the cosmos during the lifespan that we have, that we're part of getting it to move up. And the Christ, God, is not sitting there watching. God is also um, up ahead, but also living here. Hort or somebody says it in something I read today, that it isn't that, you know, often these theologians talk about up ahead. It's a God up ahead. It's not a God in the past, because the God up ahead is drawing us. But the God is still present here. But it's a God who is drawing us up ahead. And I think a couple of phrases that occurs to me we should maybe put into this first podcast is the not yet. The not yet. This beautiful journey of the cosmos, which has taken, 13.8 billion years and probably will take many more billions of years to arrive at Omega Point. I just want to say, you mentioned Omega Point. As you know, and as I know, Omega Point means where all of this magnificent creation will be united finally with the Creator in a great love act. That's another thing, by the way. I think you and I have agreed just to not plan what we talk about here. I love the fact that Teilhard says that the power that is pushing, that is being drawing it up, is the power of love. He says love is the powerhouse. And if I could just say, that's where science helps us out. Why do, in the theory of entanglement, why do atoms always want to be next to one another? Why do they always want to be connected? My son said something recently, gravity. Gravity is a very good example of love. But all of creation wants to come together. What else is love, powering the whole thing? You want to say anything more about the not yet?
The word coalescence.
Okay.
Doesn't he?
Uh-huh.
Coalescence.
Yeah.
But, Father Berry has, been one of the great ones to constantly talk about the interdependence of everything and everyone, that we're all interrelated. And, he didn't create that idea, but he propagated it in all his writings. And so that we're all kissing cousins with everything and not just with everyone. And look at the wonderful development from the, that project in Africa. I'm going to forget the Genome Project. See, so from the Genome Project is another strand that feeds into this, because I remember when Kathleen first introduced us to that, and she ran a whole workshop on the Genome Project that she had been engaged and, immersed in, that, that we all descend from a small group of people in West Africa. We're all chromosomally and DNA related. Everyone is connected.
But also,
there's nothing that in this universe that exists is not connected.
But also,
so infinite love is that vital energy that's moving us always into the future.
Yeah, I can see why you're a great homilist, But anyway, I read recently where Teilhard says that at the Big Bang was where we began. Conscious human beings began there because, as he points out, right now all of the atoms in my body, all the subatomic particles, all if it be superstring theory, whatever, they all came from the Big Bang. So at the Big Bang, Teilhard said, humans were born at that moment, and it took, as he says, a long process for us to get where we are. And sometimes I say crazy things that we may not be the end of this process, human beings, but we will see. We will see. I don't know where we are on time. I have a feeling.
I don't either, but I do think we can put that out for the future, because I think we're all very much interested in this area. The reality is, it took, how many hundreds and thousands of years or millions for finally to the coming together to come to creatures that have consciousness. But why would it stop?
Right.
Why would it stop with us? That
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think
So if
Teilhard, I think,
once you start talking about this stuff,
yeah,
you've got to be open to the reality
yeah,
that there's not only going to be, please God, if we don't blow ourselves up with the nuclear holocaust, there'll be further development to this whole understanding of human consciousness and beyond just artificial intelligence, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, as some people are petrified of. But the reality is, what would make us think that there isn't this evolution hasn't gone on beyond us, perhaps in other solar systems?
well,
So,
you know, I read recently a famous scientist said, in his opinion, no longer do you have to prove there are other living beings in the cosmos. He said, we've gotten to a point, there are so many exoplanets, so many Earths out there. You got to prove there isn't. No longer do you have to prove is there other life, you know?
well, the interesting thing is, so far we haven't been able to identify a planet that has had the exquisite coalescence of this particular planet to be able to come over its evolutionary period to sustain the kind of life that we see on this planet presently.
I'm not so
And
sure.
unfortunately we're destroying by our pollution. But the fact that there wouldn't be other planets out there in all these millions of galaxies that hasn't had the same exquisite coalescence would be absurd not to think it hasn't happened.
I think scientists may disagree with you, because I think I have read that we are finding what they call a lot of exoplanets with the Webb telescope. So that we may have already seen some Earth setup possible. But you're not a scientist. I'm not a scientist. We'll have to cede to whatever the truth is there. You know?
I'm ignorant on that one.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know.
It's been fun. I hope we fulfilled your time frame that you were hoping for.
Well, I want you to know this is an hour project.
Oh, I thought you said you wanted it to be a half hour.
Yes, yes, but I just don't want to feel like I'm calling the shots. I want you to be calling the shots too.
Hour.
I,
H-O-U-R.
yeah.
Hour being O-U-R.
Right.
No, I'm fine. You can. I love being under your guidance.
And I want to say that I would love to be in that incredible house. You won't. I guess you shouldn't say whose it is or what it is, but it looks pretty impressive. Were you a king in the past life or something?
No, this is the owner who was, obviously,
Right.
Lord Acton. It sits on the James River and the confluence of the Chickahominy River, Chickahominy, something like that. So there's a confluence of two rivers right outside this room. There's extraordinary windows, the whole length of this house, looking out on this water, and it's quite incredible.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So talk about creation. It feels
Right.
like I'm
Right.
immersed in it.
Right, right.
I haven't had much chance to enjoy it because we're running all the time, but at least in the morning I see it, and at night.
Very nice, very nice. Do you want to call it quits at this point, or what? Do you want to say anything
I
else?
think it's been a good introduction, but it's up to you and whatever Michael. If Michael thinks that he's heard something that's would be something to give people a little bite of what we're
I would say
talking
the
about.
only thing I would say, only I've just been intrigued listening, is I think you guys have a main idea, like Cosmos Theology, right?
That's what I call it, yeah.
So I would just say it and kind of define it. I don't know if you wanted to. But I think you have. Well, I'll leave it to you. I think you guys are good.
I think I've tried to define it already, Mike.
Then good, then good.
By the way, Michael Leonard, my son, who's our incredible, what do you call yourself, producer or of the podcast? Anyway, it's really refocusing Christian belief system to the cosmos.
Well, I also want to give a word for St. Paul,
Oh yes,
because what we're talking about, we hope, is now giving St. Paul his due.
yep,
Paul says, I think it's in the Colossians in this letter, all creation is groaning for the final revelation. all
Wow.
creation.
Yes.
So Paul understood the mystery of the incarnation was not a static event. And so what we're talking about here is a theology that is dynamic,
I love
a
that word.
theology that is as dynamic as the unfolding evolutionary course of the cosmos.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps in
That's-
defining
that-
what we're trying
that
to
sounds
say.
good to me. Very good to me. With that, maybe we'll say thank you to you that we made this happen. And I really like the idea that it was unplanned and spontaneous. And I hope that your enthusiasm and my enthusiasm for this whole thing sort of oozes out of this podcast to others. So shall we say goodbye for now? No, you know what I just
Goodbye for
you know
now.
what I just found out. I was in the car coming down, listening to Connecticut radio, NPR radio, and there was a American tribe who do not have the word goodbye in the entire language. They have "when we meet again" is the closest phrase that they have to say goodbye. So we're going to meet again, right? In the next podcast?
Well, isn't that what Auf Wiedersehen means? Auf Wiedersehen.
There we go.
Until we meet again.
Hey, yeah, which we are going to, right?
Yes, indeed.
I want to
Okay,
thank
thank you, Michael.
No worries.
It was great meeting you, Michael. I can't wait for you to visit me in Washington because I owe you.
No worries, no worries.
Okay.
No, I want you to come down and see our little castle.
We'll make that I owe you a big secret that the people who look at this podcast will never know what you're referring to, right?
You can tell them.
Okay. See you all in the next podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Michael.
God bless you both.